In April of 2023, the Houston Police Department received an anonymous tip from a woman who claimed she was being held against her will. Her claims included that she was kidnapped years prior, forced to live in squalor, do the bidding of her kidnapper, and had no access to the outside world. Of course, they descended on the address provided, only to discover that the alleged perpetrator was none other than Lee Arthur Carter, known professionally and more commonly as Viper the Rapper. For those of you who aren't already familiar, Viper is a Houston rapper who's known for a few things. Before his most recent case hit the news, he was quite a big name in the cloud rap genre. He was also quite a big name in the Houston Police Department's records, as I came to find out. You see, a lot of people sort of see Viper as this meme rapper who's too eccentric to ignore, and that was the impression I had as well, until around April of 2023 when this most recent case hit the news. This arrest, however, comes at the end of a very long list, as Viper is almost as prolific at being accused of increasingly evil things as he is releasing music. So let's start there. You see, Lee had been making music for a very long time. He even claims on his Wikipedia that he'd been playing piano since the age of 5. However, as this video goes on, you'll learn to be skeptical of literally anything he claims. What we do know is his music releases, and there are a lot of them. His first album was released in 2003 under the name Lee Dogg, with the album being self-titled. With tracks like Rap's What I Got and Baller Made, you can kind of just assume what this album sounds like without having to listen to it. Just an average release for a new rapper in the early 2000s. And while it wasn't commercially successful, it did not deter Lee Dogg. Continuing through the 2000s, Lee released a few more mixtapes, slowly morphing and changing the sound into the cloud rap sound that he's known best for today. It was around this time that he dropped the Lee Dogg alias and started going by Viper the Rapper, sometimes just Viper. He was committed to that rebrand too, because he actually went back and changed the name of self-titled Lee Dogg to Hustlin' Thick to rid the last mentions of Lee Dogg from his catalogue. But still, with more releases under his belt, you'd expect him to start getting a little bit more attention, right? Well, not quite. In fact, we can take it from Viper himself with his track 9900 Haters on the Wall, that out of the 10,000 people who had listened to his music on the CD Bay website, only 100 actually went to buy any. Surprisingly though, feeling sorry for himself didn't make the haters rush to buy his albums, and he remained an obscure artist throughout the 2000s. This would, as I'm sure you've guessed, change at some point, hence why I'm making this video. You see, in 2008, Viper made a song that is now infamous, titled "Y'all Cowards Don't Even Smoke Crack." Obviously, a ridiculous title, and one that would again go unnoticed on the CD Bay website. The next 5 years, again, were unsuccessful for Viper. He'd been making music since 2003, so this was around 10 years after that, and in order to try desperately to get some more exposure, he decided to put his music on YouTube. This turned out to be the big break he needed, as in 2013, "Y'all Cowards Don't Even Smoke Crack" became a huge meme overnight. Now, when it comes to this album, I got exposed to it in the same way that everybody else seems to, sort of passively seeing either the title or hearing the lyrics, and eventually thinking this is so ridiculous, I'm going to check it out for myself. And as much as this is sort of a passive attention grabbing thing, what it definitely did was convert a lot of new listeners to Viper who were genuinely enamored with his sound. It's hard to say how many people actually liked his music versus how many people just found him endearing. Regardless, his output went through the roof after this, and he instantly became very prolific. In the following year of 2014, Viper released almost an album every single day on average. And he's continued with this sort of ridiculous, relentless output across a series of different platforms to the point where it would just be redundant for me to list them all off. And I mean, this really can't be understated. If you look at his Spotify, you can just scroll and scroll and scroll and keep seeing more and more albums. And if you get to the bottom of his Spotify page, you can then look at his other Spotify page and do the same thing. There's just so much music under his belt. And in the following years, of course, he's continued on this path, posting across Instagram and Twitter every time he releases an album. But it is important to note that while he has technically released more than 1,500 albums, he only has about 15 albums worth of original content. Everything else is either remixed or just put across a load of albums. And that is pretty much it in terms of the music career for Viper the rapper. So, now that we have that established, we can move on to the reason for the video. You see, while Viper's career is now over thanks to this most recent case hitting the news and just completely shattering this endearing image people had of him, in my research, I've become aware of a lot of people who have followed him very closely, cataloguing an extensive criminal history, with his fans being the most likely victims. So, let's start with a company that you might remember if you followed Viper for a while, Free Movers Incorporated, the first trillion-dollar company. As the name suggests, it's a real estate company owned by Viper himself. Free Movers Inc. isn't just a real estate company, however. It is also an album, which is no surprise, as Viper has this habit of naming albums after literally anything that happens in his life. But we'll get to that more later. Now, it's important to note that this company, as of the most recent screenshot I can find on the Wayback Machine, is not accredited by the Better Business Bureau. In fairness, this doesn't necessarily mean they're a terrible company. It's just one entity that doesn't view them favourably. So, let's hear it from their customers and see what they think of their service. Glowing customer testimonials. Do not use them. This company is a fraud company. They sent the Whitfield apartments to collections and they claim they have done business with us when they are not even an approved vendor with our company. They cannot provide an invoice and the person does not exist as an applicant or even a piece of traffic. No one ever answers the phone. You leave a message with the machine. I smell a bunch of bull. The owner, presumably this is Lee Carter, and an additional mover showed up to move me in a handmade trailer with no lights on the inside, holes all in the flooring, a door that didn't properly close attached to a mid-sized pickup with only one headlight. Both movers had no shirts on and smelled of alcohol. I contacted the owner, again, Lee Carter, I think, and he says that he doesn't have a broker/broker license, nor does he have any proof of services rendered. According to our records, there are no records of the people that he is invoicing for ever living at this property. Now, that obviously isn't a good look, but owning a company with a terrible reputation isn't really that big of a deal. However, if you have $1,000 that you are willing to invest into this company, you can mail it directly to Viper himself, or at least that was the offer he made here in 2014. But what would the return be? Well, thankfully we do have some clarification, as in his own words, the Free Movers Inc. stock is estimated be worth 50 cents a share within a year and will be able to sell your stock for $200,000 or more. Now, this is a huge red flag, clearly, and might look like a simple scam, but according to one source I found, he began the real estate company in 2014 despite only becoming an official real estate agent in 2018. He still worked from 2014 to 2018 illegally though. He has named 2 albums after the real estate business and used to try to get people to invest and buy stock in his company. Sadly, he couldn't do this after the US Securities Exchange Commission rejected his request to register shares for Free Movers Incorporated. He sued the US Securities Exchange Commission, stating that his intention was to register 5 billion shares of stock. Yes, he actually spelt register wrong in an official amended complaint. Luckily, the case was dismissed after Viper failed to even attend the initial pre-trial conference. Whether it's too much ambition, malice, or just plain ignorance, this company kind of looks like a disaster in every sense of the word. And clearly, most likely, allegedly, I don't know for sure, just a tool for Viper to extort people, scam people for money in any way he can. While he feigns interest in registering his stocks, I can only imagine that the $1,000 he was sent by some faithful investors who believed in him has been put to good use. But then, in 2021, we had a glimmer of hope, with Viper posting a GoFundMe, asking for $35,000 to merge his company with another company that is already publicly traded. Your GoFundMe donations would instantly be turned into equivalent value stocks, and that seems like a great deal. And what's more, it looks like he either installed Grammarly or this time just really took his time and managed to spell the word register correctly. If this all sounds really confusing to you and you're not quite getting the logistics of what he's suggesting here, don't worry, it wouldn't have worked anyway. And thankfully this scam didn't get very far because the GoFundMe is no longer accepting donations and it landed on the whopping total of $5 donated, just $34,995 short of the goal. Now, while we can look at this and laugh at it and see the humour in it, I do genuinely feel bad for the people who had the displeasure of doing business with Viper. It does seem that that company is in desperate need of a full investigation by some government body, but this is far above my pay grade to talk about and figure out, so let's move on to some of the other classic Viper scams. So far, it seems that Viper has kept his scams and his music as entirely separate entities, but I'm sure it is a surprise to nobody watching that this isn't always the case. Now, by the end of this video, I can't imagine anybody would, but I just want to make my personal recommendation clear. If you ever think about buying Viper merch, or buying a Viper concert ticket, or even sending Viper a donation, or finding some way to get in touch with Lee Carter that includes the exchange of money, doing business with Free Movers Incorporated, my personal recommendation, and this is just a recommendation, absolutely under no circumstances should you ever do that. In literally every avenue, Viper has been accused of not living up to a single one of his promises, sometimes with quite funny results. In terms of merch, I saw this story in the Viper subreddit which pretty much says it all. Viper scammed my friend via merch order. I got my friend into the weird world of Viper because they have a good sense of humour and Viper is bizarre. My friend decides to get me a Viper hoodie for my birthday, which was a few months ago. They asked me a few weeks ago if I ever received a birthday present from them, and I said no. She doesn't tell me what she got me, but she says she isn't surprised, but she'll see if she can contact the person and get it sent. She proceeds to contact him 4 times, and finally files a PayPal claim. He then sends something. 4 burnt CDs in 2 cheap plastic clear cases and 3 pieces of folded up printer paper with his autograph on it, as well as a ripped up vinyl insert poster thing he signed. There was also an apology letter about not sending a vinyl or something. I assume he sent those to a handful of people. Anyone else get scammed like this? Honestly, I thought the package was fucking hilarious because of how weird it was, but I feel bad that my friend paid for a hoodie and then I got sent like less than $1 worth of basically garbage. And the poster even included some images of the absolute crap that they'd received. But if you don't have a desire for physical music or merch, maybe you just want to see him live. Well, if this is you, then you're in luck, as he's always announcing tour dates. In fact, this lucky fan got tickets to see Viper perform in Lubbock at a bar. The only issue being, this bar was in an airport, which doesn't quite seem like the right place for a vaporwave cloud rap sensation to perform. In case you hadn't guessed it, this was more than likely just a fake listing Viper had made, and in the comments someone alleged that Viper was selling tickets for a concert at a venue near them, only for them to get in touch with the owner of the venue, who apparently had no idea that the concert was even happening. Seems like an unorthodox method, but what do I know? He's the artist. And strangely enough, even stranger than all of this, in my research, I did manage to find some photos of Viper actually performing in some different places, which I know sounds like it shouldn't be the strangest part here, but as far as I'm aware, this is sort of the most unlikely scenario, is to buy a concert ticket to see Viper and then show up to the concert and show the ticket and get to see Viper perform. Now, this extensive list of scamming and deception is bad enough, but I feel like it's important to mention that from here on out we are going to be talking about some more serious alleged crimes that have much more weighted consequences towards the victims, starting with the case of his son. From what I can see, not much is really publicly known about the case, but with Viper's tendency to publish every moment of his life, we do get some insight through his Twitter. Please help me get my son, Continent Lincoln Lee Carter, back. Continent, aka rapper Moxon, aka Moccasin, aka Monsoon, is in custody of State of Texas, heart of the Antichrist. I need attorney's fees for custodial motions to get him back. God bless you for help. The state of Texas, the heart of the Antichrist, aka US Gov, has stolen my son Continent and sold him to a white family, like they stole and sold black children during slavery. Please pray for Continent. Soon the US Gov will murder me. Dear Father Christ, my God, please forgive me. I'm Gentile, unworthy to talk to you, but I love you. The time has now come to take me and those with no COVID mark of beast shot, and those who have since denounced vaccine, since the US Gov stole and sold my son Lee here. Please give him to me in heaven. Now, I obviously don't know the details of this case, and this is clearly something that is incredibly emotional and seems to be inducing some sort of breakdown for Viper here. So I really don't feel comfortable just condemning Viper as a deadbeat based off these few tweets and the brief information we do have. But what I am confident in saying is that Viper is most likely not a trustworthy nor reliable person. That GoFundMe obviously was more successful than his previous one, falling just about $50 short of $1,000. This was also a significant moment, as this was maybe the first and last time Viper made a GoFundMe that didn't just look like a blatant scam. The case is still ongoing, or at least was in 2023 when Viper tweeted, "Just bought another bottle of syrup for $100 because I can't smoke weed for a while because of my youngest son custody case. Cassette or CD, you choose with free Viper signed bonus DVD and available now on all online music streaming platforms and at rapperviper.bandcamp.com. I also really have to show the cover for this because it's a work of art. It really does make me think though, do you think when those models posed for that picture, did they know that it would end up on a mixtape cover about a man who now has to drink lean because he's battling a custody case for his son and can't have weed anymore? Regardless, this does at least show us that somebody didn't think Viper's son was safe in his home, under his supervision. Why? What could be going on in his home for investigators to come to this decision? This next section will be a little different. I'm going to start by describing a series of events alleged to have been perpetrated by Viper, as told through the testimonials of the alleged victim. Sometime, most likely around 2019, a homeless pregnant woman was panhandling on the streets of Houston when Viper came across her. He offered her $1 and told her he'd offer to help her back at his house. She went with him, with the only alternative being that of remaining on the streets for the foreseeable future. When she arrived, she was locked in a garage, and that is where she would spend the next 4 to 5 years of her life. During this time, she alleges to have been assaulted both physically and sexually, forced to use hard drugs, including crack cocaine. In one instance, in a text exchange, she claims to have told Viper she was dying, at which point he responded with, "Quit the dramatics." During this stint, she managed to escape through a garage window that she broke open as the authorities were in the home, at which point she was transported to the hospital, only to be returned back to the home following her recovery. After this, Viper boarded that window up and told her neighbour he did that to prevent her from escaping again. Finally, in 2023, she managed to send that anonymous tip through a laptop in the home to the 911 line, which resulted in the discovery of her living conditions. And per CNN, officers said they arrived at the home, pried open the garage door and discovered a makeshift toilet that did not flush, and a mattress covered with fresh vomit, along with diapers, snack chips and Twinkies, the criminal complaint said. Police said the garage had a lock on the inside that needed a key to be opened. But what did Viper have to say about this? Well, his lawyer actually came with quite an interesting defense. Carter and other witnesses who know the couple will have ample evidence to demonstrate that they've been in a relationship for years, entering a not guilty plea on these grounds. His claims also include them having a 3-year-old child together, and this being a consensual relationship they were in. And of course, he made a statement to his Twitter. "I am innocent. I am out of jail. I did not do any of the allegations, and I will be fully exonerated, and my evidence will prove my innocence. Tape or CD and available now on all online music streaming platforms and on all online stores and at rapperviper.bandcamp.com. There is absolutely no telling to the lengths that Viper will go to get attention on his music. Since the listeners seem to have been dropping off one by one, he turns his allegations into a mixtape. Really sickening stuff, in my opinion, given the severity of an allegation like this, and the lack of any sort of decorum in the face of them. I mean, I know Viper is someone who's always funny to laugh at, and I feel like this is one of those things where a lot of people lose interest in Viper because of the severity of this. It's like before, he was scamming people, that's kind of funny. I would just never buy anything off him so I won't get scammed. Now, it's an allegation this serious. If he didn't look bad enough, it took the police 9 months to track Viper down after this, as he wasn't actually home at the time of the raid and there was a warrant out for his arrest. The details of the case really do paint a miserable picture too. Silver, the Houston police spokesperson, said information on the pregnancy is unknown at this time as investigators work to piece together details. Before last April, the woman had texted 911 several times and had been taken to the hospital, but she had never reported being abducted or abused, Silver said. During those occasions, she was released in Carter's care after treatment, she said. We would take her information, we would make sure she was transported to the hospital, and the paramedics would transfer her to the hospital. But then it appears she would go right back to him, Silver said. Now, to me, this whole story does kind of sound like Viper had taken advantage of someone who was down on their luck, only for her to return, presumably out of desperation, as she would be returning to her previous living conditions, which was homelessness. But that's just what reading this information made me think initially. Of course, I don't know anything other than what has been reported on. One thing to note, while I was editing this video, I came across this tweet from Viper that does seem to shed some light on both the case of his son and the kidnapping case. The girl in the case is my son, Moccason, Mom. Cassette or CD, you choose, with free Viper signed DVD, each different and all new, now while items last, and available now on all online music streaming platforms and all online stores, and at rapperviper.bandcamp.com. Of course, it's impossible to take Viper at his word, but it would make sense considering the status of the pregnancy was left unresolved, and the age of the child does seem to line up. On top of this, it would also mean Viper has no legal ground to keep Continent, as he wouldn't even be the biological father, presumably. It would also explain why she kept going back after each hospital stay if he was the primary caregiver for her child in those moments. But, of course, I'm not a detective or a journalist, so don't take my word for it. And definitely don't take Viper's word for it, since he's made it clear he's not to be trusted. What's worse, while police were investigating this kidnapping case, they discovered that another woman had died on Viper's property, around the same time he was holding the first woman hostage. The woman allegedly died in July of 2023, but not many details are known. And if that wasn't bad enough, Viper was bonded out, and of course, he was ordered to have no contact at all with the victim. And of course, because it's him, he instantly broke the conditions of his bond as soon as he got out and got rearrested. So obviously, this was a bridge too far for whatever audience he had left. Public opinion took a very sharp downturn, rightly so, and the already increasing obscurity just hit its peak. That's not to say the story ends here though, as just 6 months ago at time of writing, Viper and his now ex-wife were arrested on a whopping 108 counts of fraud and tampering with evidence. What a way to exonerate yourself, Viper. The Hiram Clark hustler truly has struck again. This all came to a head just 16 days ago at the time of writing the script, and probably like a month and a half ago now at time of recording, as we now finally have some sort of resolution. To be totally clear, the kidnapping and the fraud charges have been dismissed. But he did plead guilty to 3 other charges, being sexual assault, tampering with government records, and violating court order/bond conditions 2 more times within 12 months. These charges have finally hit him with a 15-year prison sentence. And not to be too morbid, as a 53-year-old man with a nasty crack habit, there's a very good chance he won't be breathing free air ever again. I think the saddest part of this story for me was reading about his family. Granted, I want to make it clear, the source I had for this was a review of You'll Cowards from 2021, but they did get a lot of info right, and they have a based Echo 2K profile picture, so I trust them. Viper has a lot of siblings, including Greg Carter, a film producer. One of his sisters is actually a successful doctor. Not much else is known about his other siblings though. The review also goes into his ex-wife Amanda a lot more, and overall is a very interesting read and goes a lot more in depth than I have here in this video. But I just wonder, if he had 2 siblings who went their own way and had successful careers in 2 very different parts of the world, what is it that made Viper how he is? I mean, Viper is like a comically evil Marvel villain, and he's not even that smart or secretive about it. All the scams just seem so transparent, but the level of depravity that we've seen from him goes far beyond someone who's just very coy about taking money from people and feeling villainous, and goes into a level of depravity that I only expect to see in the worst people. For now though, it is fair to say that the story of Viper the Rapper is over. And who knows, maybe in 15 years he'll come back, he'll be reformed, and he'll be a nice productive member of society. But somehow I doubt that.